Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today, we're going to discuss all things political, current things that's going on in the political climate, and then, we're going to take a short, deep dive into today's politics and the political concept of power sharing between Democrats and Republicans in the country. We'd like to thank you for joining us here on this fine spring day in the year of our Lord 2023. Um, One of the first things we want to start out talking about as far as current political happenings right now. And as always, we want to start out, the broadcast with hope to solve for the betterment of America and all its citizens, regardless of political stripe. That's our sole purpose. And we're going to go about it in a way that we strive to pride ourselves on a no spin political environment. When and if, we have people to come on, whether they be of Democratic or Republican stripe, to comment, to offer commentary, to debate, we're going to hold them to account. We're not going to let them drift off or digress, change the subject, because this is the best way to solve it. And, politics can be tricky and real slippery because there's a certain art to the way that they can dodge the question. Or art, of the dodge, if you will. When a direct question is asked there, to say, yes, I'm for that, and let me tell you why. Or no, I'm not for that, and let me tell you why. I mean, we get the whys of it all. We should, as intelligent American voters. We get the whys of it all, as far as, where your political stance is as a conservative or as a liberal. But the, answering of the direct question, to not spin it, we want that. We want to know, when it's a question that we, the American people, should get a clear, definite, definitive, clear cut, no beating around the bush, yes or no, then that's what we're going to push for here at Soluble. And then the whys of it all. And then the whys of it all. Okay, in trying to solve, in trying to make America better for all of our citizens, rich, poor, no matter what race, color, creed, what have you, as Americans. First order of business, I guess we'll go into this situation with the young kid in Massachusetts who has let classified information get out into the public arena, to his gaming pals, to the online gaming community at large. Who knows? Along with racist memes, brandishing of firearms or what have you. And we're under Democratic leadership right now, and we as voters, all voters, but especially as Democrats, we're going to have to, make sure that the president knows if he seems to act any way other than that, the buck stops with him. Now, knowing Joe Biden, he's going to, be all ears, all hands on deck to this problem. I mean, how it happened in the first place, that's neither here nor there right now. It's happened. And, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And it could be either party, but our stance here is Soluble right now, on this particular classified documents leak or breach, if you will. There's no time for finger pointing. There's no time for finger pointing because, when something like this happens, regardless of, whether there's a Republican in the Oval Office or a Democrat, what does finger pointing do? Does it make us stronger as a country? Does it solve the problem? Does it, correct the problem to make sure that it never happens again? Finger pointing does none of the above. And both parties can be guilty of it. And that's what we're going to try to make the beauty of Soluble be revealed as. The truth to come down. Because, how are you going to solve it if you don't tell it like it is? If you don't speak truth to power, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. And, we challenge our fellow Americans on the other side of the aisle to do the same thing, with the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the Sean Hannitys of the world. I mean, you see that right now, they're in court fighting a defamation lawsuit. And we're going to take a close look to see if, there's a settlement offer. Because when and if it is on behalf of Fox, then we know that, they know that there's been wrongdoing. So we're going to look for that. And then, if a settlement does happen, we as American citizens, as the American people, should expect for higher ups at Fox, executives, to come out to the American public and issue apology. If you're wrong, let the American people know, so that, there can be some faith and trust put into anything that comes out from the Fox News channel. But, back to the original. It's not about, finger pointing when it comes to this classified documents leak with the young man in Massachusetts. This, it hurts all of us as Americans. So it's time to fix it in a way that makes sure that it never happens again. Here you have a young man privy to all of this sensitive, highly intelligent information. Where was the vetting process here? Where was, the oversight in the rank and file? These are, things that I'm pretty sure that the president is contemplating and thinking about. And, he's going to, we trust, take action, whether he's dealing with, the Joint Chiefs, talking to them and trying to get to the bottom of how this happened, why, and, to make sure it never happens again. To make sure it never happens again. Now, some may call us biased here at Soluble, but, the record speaks for itself. You go back and look at some of the last Republican administrations, and you go back and you look at some of the last Democratic administrations, and you be the judge. History is already recorded, what was best for America and what worked out on behalf for the betterment of all Americans when these Republican administrations were in the Oval Office and or these Democratic administrations were in the Oval Office. China is very aggressive right now. I saw something here earlier where, they had this secret police station set up somewhere in New York City, totally, willing to violate America's sovereignty. But we need a measured hand here. We need a measured approach. Meanwhile, while, you have boots on the ground, our everyday intelligence officers doing the work, doing the business of the people to keep America safe. Here you have, the former president of the Republican Party praising Xi. Actually praising President Xi. And there's nothing wrong with, giving someone credit where it's due. But these things don't go hand in hand. We don't praise a foreign leader who's, violating America's sovereignty. Doing things that, affects people's freedom, whether it be in his own country or here in our country. It's two totally different governments. And that's not to say that America doesn't have work to do when it comes to living up to its ideals, its constitutional promises to all of its citizens, So here it's Soluble, and telling it like it is. We hope that, the president keeps a steady hand when it comes to foreign policy. But at the same time, we recognize that there's definitely work to be done within our domestic arena. We recognize that, and we call it like we see it. Balls and strikes. right down the middle, just like we see it. And this classified breach, this classified documents breach, it has to be dealt with thoroughly. But we have a president with a sound administration, no actors. He's listening to his joint chiefs of staff. He's listening to the commanders, the professionals. And as always, we're quite sure that they'll come up with a very intellectual approach as a means to deal with this issue and make sure that it never happens again. Now, we spoke to you sometime, in some of the earlier broadcasts in weeks gone by. Let's not forget, we have the debt ceiling coming up. We have the debt ceiling coming up. Now, as of this moment, excuse me, and I could be wrong, but as of this moment, and I spoke of this in days gone by, the Republicans have not brought forth a budget or a spending proposal to, not wait until the 11th hour and, threaten America's credit, threaten the value of the dollar, creating shaky markets. I mean, the economy is as we know is very fickle, and it takes a lot of fine tuning here or there. You see what the Feds are doing. They're lowering interest rates. They're raising interest rates in the name of trying to tame inflation. So this is nothing to play with or use as a political power tool to make the president look bad, going into an election year. Because as I said, and we have to realize this is Democrats, and to stay active, stay aggressive. Because as surely as I'm sitting here, like vultures, sitting in the trees, waiting for the smell of decomposition, this is the Republican Party. They're waiting on something bad to happen. Something, finger pointing like to happen, where they could say, see, he's weak, he's soft. And that's their perception of the Democratic Party. But we know better. We know better. And so, we're going to have to press on, but we have to hold our elected officials accountable. We have to hold them accountable. It can't be a one-sided approach. It can't be a one-sided approach. And, people of color, this 90-something plus percentile that votes Democrat, it's going to be up to you, what you get out of your vote. Now more than ever, we're pushing the playing field towards a level of equality. And we're closer than ever as people of color in this country. And, as I said, we've had the power to, where you've seen evidence of the power of your vote when you've shown up to the polls. And I'm talking about all of our Democratic voters, but people of color in particular, this 90-something plus percentile that votes for the Democratic Party. When you show up, you usually get the outcome that you're looking for. You voted Obama in, you voted Trump out. Now, as I said, and we have to keep in mind to stay aware, we only won by, a couple of million votes. I think there was 2.5 million, 3 million votes that separated the two candidates. And as I said in a podcast before, we thank God for the Swifties. We're looking for them to come out again. Taylor, if you're out there listening, continue to rally your troops. You know that, as a woman, your rights are under attack. So we have to keep pushing for fairness, for equality, for all Americans. No one is above the law. And that's the approach that, we have to take. We have to keep in mind as American citizens, because, this thing could implode from within if we don't get more involved in the political process now more than ever. You have Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. He's in the news. He's in the political news cycle of today. Now he wants to disclose. Now he wants to disclose. Now, is this full disclosure? That's what, we have to keep in mind. And as Democratic voters, the last thing that we can do is, go down and wallow in the mire with Republicans when it comes to the Supreme Court. And, if we don't believe in ourselves and rally our voters, we can allow the Supreme Court to be, looked at as a contaminated political body, a court that legislates from the bench, which Republicans claim to so hate or to have so much disdain for. But we can't wallow in the mire. The Supreme Court is tilted heavily to the right now, but we as Democratic voters have to start with the voter in the mirror and realize that, as I've said before on previous broadcasts, this is what minority rule looks like when you don't show up to vote. And so, that's the lesson that we have to take going forward, that we had the former president come into office, seat 3 Supreme Court justices in a one-term presidential servitude, 4 years, one term, and he seats 3 Supreme Court justices. Now, as I said, Justice Thomas, he's been accepting lavish gifts, selling properties, that his mother's still allowed to live in. It just reeks of corruption. Political bias towards conservative causes. You're out on these lavish trips with millionaire, billionaire dollar money, and we know there's a lot of winking and nodding going along in the conversations. Now, there was no disclosure before until this article was written by some young man here a couple of weeks ago. How do we know? How do we know that, if Mr. Crow had no business before the courts? Did he have friends? Did he have family? Did he have business partners? It stinks to high heaven. As Senator Romney said, it stinks to high heaven. But the Supreme Court is the highest court, somewhat the law of the land. And, to let it continue to be tainted would, it would be on Democratic voters. It would be on the Democratic voters. So, while the court now is not a respected body currently, and we get that from Democrats, but we still have to pledge allegiance to the system. We still have to have a belief in the system because, part of this is our responsibility. This is partially on us for not showing up, especially people of color, especially people in that 90-something percentile, people of color who don't show up in large numbers. So we can get Justice Thomas out. He's there, I think, 30 plus years now. It's time. He knows it's time, but he's holding on for dear life. And he's hoping that, you won't show up in these large numbers coming into an election year 2024, that, he can step down. Matter of fact, we're going to go on the record right here tonight on Soluble. And, it's safe to say that if there is a Republican president going into the calendar year 2025, somewhere in those 4 years there, Justice Clarence Thomas will step down. So, he's weary. He's worn 30 plus years. And so here we go, where, the American justice, the American political system, it moves ever so slow. It moves ever so slow. As Dr. King said, the moral arc is long. It's long. And here we are. We're in that longevity process there. but we have to be patient because we know where it bends. And so, this is just one more reason to make sure that we show up, on election day, because he's worn and weary, Justice Thomas. And it's a good chance that when we get President Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee is going into the 2024 election, we get them elected. And he's worn and weary, so he's probably going to more likely step down anyway, regardless. But he's holding on, and God rest her soul. We see what happened with Justice Ginsburg. She tried to hold on and didn't make it. So to solve it, to make the Supreme Court a more respectable body again, to make the Supreme Court more reflective of the wishes of the American people, women in particular. We're going to have to rock this vote. This is just another reason why we have to rock this vote in 2024. Moving along from Justice Thomas, we're looking at inflation as something that is no longer relevant, no longer a threat. With sound leadership, I can't say it enough. With sound leadership, I think the Treasury Secretary, under the guidance of the president, is going to do everything that they can to, keep the economy strong, keep the economy humming right along, so that there is always an opportunity out there for American citizens to achieve the American dream. Now, could wages be higher? Of course. Of course. We need higher wages? Of course. AI is coming along. And so, we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. But as far as, wage increases, that's one of the things that we can tighten our Democratic officials up on. That's one thing that, we can try to light a fire under them to make sure that they get done. But here's the thing that we have to realize also as Democrats in the country. When, we go from Democratic administration to a Republican administration, Republican president to a Democratic president, we're not really helping the country as far as to solve the wage crisis, to make the dollar even stronger, to pay down on the deficit, which, we all have a stake in. But when it goes from Democrat to Republican, it's hard for us as Democrats and Democratic presidents to get a system of fairness going there. To namely make the wealthy pay their fair share. To do more of putting a squeeze on to give people a livable wage. It's hard to do it when it goes back and forth from Democrat to Republican, Democrat to Republican. Another reason why it's important that we make sure that we show up to the polls. Now, as I said, the Republicans come in with the majority in the House. And the first thing that you see them do, although before the election, it was the border. It was inflation. It was prices. It was the prices of milk, eggs, etc. We don't have a border now. This was Republican talking points. Fear mongering, which is definitely in their playbook. But as soon as the election was over, the first thing that they did, the first piece of legislation crafted was to go after the IRS. Because that's where they're at. They're for the wealthy. And that's not to say that Democrats are against the wealthy. But everyone, in order for us to get everyone to pay their fair share. And let's take entitlement programs off the table right now. Because, that's another discussion for another day. Just simply paying your fair share as a taxpayer when it comes to road, bridges, etc. Parks, things that, our tax dollars go to. It's going to be important to show up because that's where we're at now. It's a seesaw battle here. You see a Republican, come in office. the former president, the first thing he does is give a tax break to the wealthy. Like that's what the country needed first and foremost. My first act in office. And so, you have Republicans. I think Ted Cruz has come out now attacking. And this is not good for the American economy. This is not good for the middle class when everyone doesn't pay their fair share. Everyone. And, it's not going to change. There's not going to be a come to Jesus moment, when it comes to conservative politicians, when it comes to lobbyists on Capitol Hill lobbying for the wealthy, constantly looking for loopholes and ways to avoid paying taxes, moving things overseas, um, you know, having crafty, clever lawyers to help them dodge. So, we need to keep this in mind as Democratic voters. If we want to see solid change, if we want to see America take 3 steps forward and not 4 steps backwards, but to take 3 steps forward and then take another 1 or 2. We're going to have to make sure that going into 2024, going into the calendar year 2025, we have a Democrat remaining in the Oval Office. This is the only way. Because as I said, whereas Republicans are for the wealthy in a dark way, in a way where, they don't mind them cheating. They look the other way when they're cheating. We see what happened with former President George W. Bush, with the Enron, with the Kenny boys of the world, with the Bernie Madoffs of the world. You ask yourself. And this is for, voters of all, this is for Republican voters also. Because, of course, the Republicans are for the wealthy, and they're great at playing the race card. So, Republicans of the political stripe of being conservative and you're not so wealthy, you're just a Republican voter. What has trickle-down economics done for you? What has compassionate conservatism done for us as a country? But got us into a recession. The last I heard. And Main Street had to bail out Wall Street. So, as Democrats, as a Democratic president, we're not, championing or encouraging, our president to go after the wealthy in an unjust way. But, at the same time, as voters, we have to understand that they're looking for any way to duck and dodge and not pay their fair share. And you will see Republicans, they're tough on crime. They want to go after criminals. Crime is out of control. And, they're right. They're right. We can't have muggings in the street, robberies, rapes, et cetera, et cetera. That's not good for a society. And we get that. But, can we get the Republican Party? Can we get the other side to agree in a soluble way to look at the possibility that what's wrong, with paying your fair share? Can we get the party to, take a long look at that? What's wrong with paying your fair share? Take a long look. Ask yourself, okay, as I said, it's good to go after crime. It's good to be tough on crime. But there's a certain white collar crime that, we can't allow Republicans to turn a blind eye to. With the tax cheats, the tax dodgers, people not paying their fair share. And you notice, here's what Sawyer was bringing to your attention. And that's our goal here, is to solve, to be eye-opening, to wake you up to what's going on so that you will know the importance of voting. But what's wrong with going after white-collar criminals? Republicans don't have a stomach for it. They don't have a stomach for it. It's only one kind of crime they know, even though it's happening. Even though it's happening on a regular basis. So as Democrats, we're going to have to do everything we can to get another 4 years for this administration, or, if the president decides not to run, whoever's going to be the nominee. It's very important. This is the way to win. This is the way to eliminate any uncertainty or doubt about what's going on. That lingering uncertainty that you have in the back of your mind when we have a Republican president. Are we getting full disclosure? Are we getting the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Now, we know from the last two administrations we didn't. We went into Iraq with lies, false claims. We had COVID strike the nation, false doctors, misleading statements. So, this is it should be easily distinguishable. Which party is going to give you the level, give it to you on the level. And if Democrats don't, we hold their feet to the fire. And, they do the right thing at the end of the day. This is what I see. This is what I see here at Soluble. And so, as a working class citizen, I'm going to champion the Democratic causes. I think it's for the betterment of America, for all of Americans. Now, when that day comes and I reach that millionaire status, I'm still going to be for what? The Democratic Party. Because we here at Soluble feel like that's the party that represents all of humanity. Now, that's just, a few of the things that are currently going on in politics today. The economy, how we're dealing with recession threats, inflation threats, Justice Thomas, Chinese aggression, foreign policy, Dominion, taking Fox to court for these false allegations of voter fraud, during the 2024 election. Now we want to get into the most main topic of the day, which is power sharing. Power sharing between Democrats and Republicans. Now, this is mainly aimed at Democratic voters who are that 90-something percentile people of color. Because here at Soluble, our goal is to solve it there first, to create that playing field that is equal, that is level. That's the goal. That's the goal here. And, we would be negligent in our political responsibilities to do anything otherwise, because, we know that charity begins at home. And this 90-something percentile people of color in the Democratic Party, those are voters that look like us. And this is not to play the race card. But, this group of voters, we're voting in large numbers. But now more than ever, we have to make sure that we're getting, what we should be getting out of America based on how we serve, based on our patriotism and loyalty that we've shown, throughout the generations in this country. Now, we know the beginnings of, dealings of Negroes in this country. The beginning was bondage, human servitude. We beat it. Then we had a Reconstruction period there where things looked like they started to progress, and, create a level playing field there, equal power sharing. And then along came Jim Crow. We beat it. Segregation. Now, I've heard, and I'm not going to digress here too much and be as quick as I possibly can to bring my points home. But, segregation was before my time, being that I was born in 1967. And as I began to become of age in the 70s, this thing was largely disappearing. But, in that Jim Crow era there, that we did beat as people of color in particular right now, that's voting in this country. We had this separate but equal policy in the country during those times, but it was anything but. It was anything but. So because of that, you know, there was a breakdown in the neighborhood, in our communities. Now, if it was separate but equal, meaning that we got equal tax dollars put into our neighborhoods, put into facilities or things that we needed in our neighborhood, we know that it would have made the neighborhood a lot better. But you know, during these times in the political halls of power, it could have easily been said that that was not a good use of taxpayers' dollars during these what's supposed to have been separate but equal times. America got the separate part right. They definitely got the separate part right. But equal, that's very much up for debate. But our position here at Soluble is that, you know, the equal part, you know, it failed miserably and willfully so. Okay, moving on from Jim Crow, separate but equal, into the civil rights era, which is where we're at now. Now, what you saw on January the 6th of 2021, this was because, and it's always happened in America. It's always happened in America where Negroes begin to get equal footing to be able to be governed and be dealt with on an equal playing field in America. There's been unrest, you know, amongst racist Caucasians in America. Always unrest, always threats, threats of violence, threats of secession, threats of civil war. And that's where we're at now. That's where we're at. January 6th has come about, 2021, because we're at a power sharing time now. Now, as I said, we beat slavery. We beat Jim Crow. And we beat separate but equal. We're in the civil rights era now, attempting to go forward and get over this final hurdle of equality, where, you know, cops have to go by the book. You know, we got representation in the halls of power to ensure that, you know, everything is dispersed in a fair and equal manner to whatever communities that may require. And so it's going to be up to us as voters, as Democratic voters in particular, people of color, this 90-something percentile, to get ready for the new power sharing era. Because as long as we show up, as long as we show up in the numbers that we have shown up in to get Obama in and or to get Trump out, as long as we show up in those numbers, we're going to have a definite way to create an equal playing field in politics in this country. Now, you know, we saw what the Republicans tried to do with putting Herschel up for a Senate candidate against Raphael Warnock. We saw this joke, you know, and this is one of the oldest tricks in the book, you know, that Republicans will use. It doesn't matter, you know, whether the Negro is qualified or not. It don't matter. It doesn't matter if he's qualified for the office, for, you know, the position that he's running for. The fact is, he's a token Negro. And, you know, in that situation, as long as you're going to, you know, dance to the beat of my drum, then any Negro will do. So, you know, when it comes to power sharing, this is where we're at. And this is what has the nation on edge now. Now, the soluble thing to do, the soluble approach, if you will, is to come on out in droves, you know, show up to vote in large numbers. Because, you know, it's a time of reckoning now. And, you know, in our generation, and, you know, any and all people of color, Democratic voters in particular, that can push this 90-something percentile number, we all have a stake in it. It's all of our responsibility to get, you know, this thing we call equality that we've been so long marching for. debating for, protesting for. It's right here. It's right at our fingertips now. And all it requires is a continuation of large numbers going to the polls. Now, of course, you're going to have pushback. For example, like what happened on January the 6th. And this is what makes it, a time for a day of reckoning. We want to see it with our own eyes now. We can no longer wait for what may happen in the future. What our grandkids are going to experience. We have to push it across the finish line now, because if we kick this political football, continue to kick it down the road, our grandchildren may forget. You have a lot of children today, that's 25 or younger. I venture to say even 30 or younger, that are Negroes in this country, Democratic voters, people of color in particular, that don't even, have any idea of what Negroes in this country went through, as far as sit-ins, having high pressure water hoses put on them, attack dogs, billy clubs, jailed in large numbers. There's some, fleeting paragraph in some American history book, unless possibly you're in Florida, you may not even see it at all with the way the governor is doing book burning down here in this state. But a lot of the young voters, they don't have a solid memory of, or a solid, set of values to appreciate what Negroes went through during those times in the 60s, 50s, to get this thing, to the point where it can be, civil rights in the country. So we definitely have to act on it now. We have to go out in large numbers, as I said, rock the vote. And you begin to see what power sharing looks like. Now, of course, Republicans are going to make threats, as I said, threats to succeed, threats of civil war, threats of violence because, it's rigged. There's cheating going on. But there's no time to be discouraged. There's no time for fear in this moment and time in American history. And this is what it's all about. This is where, you see the Republicans enraged, on edge, fear-mongering, doing all kinds of things to stir up discord in the country by putting a candidate, a very flawed individual, bringing him up for the nomination like they did with the previous president, because they don't want a power share. So it's on us. It's on us. The ball is in our court. If we want power sharing, we have a chance right now, opportunity right now, to take the bull by the horns. And you begin to see what power sharing looks like. The Supreme Court looks more like us. As I said, these cops who are walking the beat, they start to realize that they have to police by the book now. I thought he had a weapon and I fired, won't cut it anymore. There are cameras everywhere. And as I said, they want to leave the force. They want to quit the profession of policing and say that you can't do policing anymore. You have to be soft on criminals. The criminals have more rights than the police. That's not the case. But this is what power sharing does look like. It brings about a change in the way things are done versus the way things have been done throughout this country since its inception up to now. Caucasians have really not had to toe the line of fairness. They haven't really had to toe the line of fairness. So without any pushback now, because, we realize here at Soluble, when they push back, we push back too, even harder. So there can never be another Tulsa massacre like what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have power sharing right here at our fingertips. And, it's only going to be our fault if we, fail to get this across the goal line of equality for all American citizens, especially people of color. So it's no time to complain. It's no time to finger point. It's no time to play the race card. What time it is it's time to vote. And then take a firm stand, on your vote, with what you expect out of your vote. But power sharing is something that, Caucasian America is very uncomfortable with. And let's just be honest, because as I said, here at Soluble, we can only solve this thing. We can only solve it, Democratic voters, if we speak truth to power. We speak truth to power. This is a numbers game. It always has been. It always will be. The majority rules. And so when it comes to people of color in particular, as I said, power sharing is right here at your fingertips. So with that being said, you can best believe that Republican politicians, racist Caucasians in the country, are going to find a way to set you back. Find a reason to maybe lock you up. Find you a new drug. They're going to try to do something to stunt your growth, to control you, to be able to continue to control the levels of power where you have less and they have more. So, to that Democratic voter out there, there's no time for, despair, fear, throwing your hands up in frustration, ready to give up. We're here. We're here. We're in the red zone, getting ready to score. And with this score, with this touchdown, not a field goal, but with this touchdown, we'll bring power sharing. It will level the playing field. And this red zone touchdown, is a metaphor for going out to vote. That's what's going to get the ball into the end zone and not through the goalpost. We want it in the end zone. So we're going to have to show up in large numbers. And, there's no better way to solve. There's no other way to solve it when it comes to solving the crisis that we see and that we feel and that we deal with on a regular basis, as far as having a lack of equality. The ball's in our court now. It lies at our feet. We haven't beat slavery, Jim Crow, separate but equal. And anything that the American government has thrown at us, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. Our position here at Soluble is that the Democratic Party is the lesser of two evils. It works better for people of color, for Negroes in America, versus the other party. It works better because the vast majority of us, as Negroes in America, we're pretty much a working class people. We definitely have, our millionaires, a few billionaires out there also. But the overall vast majority of us are working class people. So this is our party. Now, with power sharing comes responsibility. With power sharing comes knowledge of how things work. With power sharing comes an attentiveness. So we're going to have to keep pushing that, for those of us that are voting, for those of us that know we're in the red zone. And the only way to get this ball across the goal line is to go out and continue to vote, continue to sign up young voters. I mean, think about it. Between 2020 and coming into the year 2024, we have to realize there are going to be a lot more eligible voters coming on board who have come of age. We want those voters in the Democratic camp. Now, of course, Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot. They're trying to, find a position You know, they're flailing. They're like a fish out of water right now. They're trying to find a position on which to govern from. And a lot of what's making that so difficult is because the American economy, the American way of life overall is doing good. It's progressing post COVID. Do we have things to still work out? Do we have issues that we need to work on still? Yes, of course we do. Of course we do. But we won't solve these issues with a political biasness, with a party agenda, instead of putting what's best for the country first and foremost. So, to the people of color, that 90-something percentile Democratic voting bloc, let there not be a mystery. Let there not be question marks in your head. The reason that there is so much turmoil here and so much upheaval is because we're at a time of power sharing. And now you must take the bull by the horns before you can complain. When we win, even if there is an attempted coup, threats of succession, or what, we shouldn't be discouraged. We shouldn't get sidetracked. We have to keep pressing on. Now, this has come about, and this is how there's evidence of real power sharing going on and real power sharing potential here, and a leveling of the playing field, regardless of how Caucasian America feels, because we're not that revengeful people. We're not looking to gain equality and gain power in the country as a means of payback. We just want a better way of life. We want a way of life in America where we can strive and flourish. Now, to bring my point home as much as I can, there's evidence of power sharing. For the first time in the history of the country, we elected an African American president, and out came the dog whistles. Out came the former President Trump with accusations of something underhanded going on from the deep state, because this guy is not a legal citizen. His birth certificate has been forged. These are the things that were said about the former President Obama. And the former President Trump was basically saying what the vast majority of Caucasian America, racist or not, was saying. This is what power sharing is beginning to look like. For the first time in the history of the country, we have an African American president. We have an African American president. That's power sharing. That's how the vast majority of Republicans and Caucasians in America are looking at it. And albeit, that's not to say that former President Obama didn't get, some of the Caucasian vote. That's great. I'm sure he did. And we're not, our position here at Soluble is not that this is all of, Caucasian America. We're just trying to give you one point in fact of where an example of power sharing can, set us back if we're not aware, if we don't stay focused as to what's going on. So from Obama, which started to be assigned to Caucasian America, that, we're going to have to share power now. We can't just no longer rule over Negroes in America. You see Trump come out with the dog whistles, just outright racist accusations with racist undertones about his birth certificate, about him not being, a citizen, a legal citizen. He was an undercover Muslim. These were all things to undermine his presidency, undermine his legitimacy as American citizen, because they don't want to share power. And so we saw what happened after, the president served 2 terms and it was time for him to give up office. We saw what happened after that. And that was a rebellion against power sharing. That was a pushback, if you will, for America to say, for Caucasian America to say we don't want to share power. We're not ready to share it, nor will we ever will be. And there was the former President Trump put in office. Okay, he had 4 years. We came to our senses and we came out to the polls again because we saw what started and how it finished with Obama, you know, and I think one of the key words in his campaign slogan was change. That was a scary thing to Republicans in America. Change we can believe in. But the word change, regardless, as it relates to having an African-American president. Because, you know, racist Caucasian America didn't think about change as far as changing for a better economy. Here's a president that can change the way, you know, corporate polluters, you know, pollute our streams and taint the air and water that we breathe. They weren't thinking about those type of changes. You know, changes for a new legislative agenda, for a new, better unified America. That wasn't the change that they got when he used the word change in his campaign slogan. They saw that there was a changing of the guard. Even though that's not what it represented in his campaign slogan. That's what racist Republicans saw and racist Caucasian America. Beginning of power sharing. And there was the pushback. So we went from change we can believe in, or just change, period. But what changed? Did Obama create a civil war? Did Obama create a race war? Did Obama try to come in and govern from the Negro perspective, first and foremost, and then the rest of America be damned, or take the scraps? No, he governed from a position that was left of center, which he should have. He's a Democrat. And America thrived. He pulled us out of the recession, created a healthcare system, because, you know, obesity in the country is you know, becoming a major issue, a major crisis. You know, it's draining on the job market. It's draining, you know, in our medical system. So he created change. He come in on a campaign slogan of change, and America thrived. There was no, you know, Armageddon. No, there was no all of a sudden no doom and gloom, because we had the first African-American president in the history of America. But there we went from change to make America great again. So you see the difference in the two. You see the difference. You see the code talk there. You see the dog whistle. You go from change we can believe in, and it was good for America. Look at the policies. Look at where America was in 2008 versus where it was in 2016 when the former president left office. So we debunked that. We debunked that. It's null and void. The change was good. The change was good, not for a certain race of people under the former first African American president. The change was good for all of America. As a matter of fact, it was so good that at the end of his first term, they gave him a second one. They gave him a second one. But going from make America great again, going from change we can believe in to make America great again. You know, you have to pay close attention there. And if you don't know, ask questions. But make America great again was the pushback and say, you know, let's put Caucasians in America first and foremost. And everyone else is going to fight an uphill battle for equality, for a piece of the American pie, for fairness in housing, policing, job hiring. It was a pushback. So what did America do after the first term of Make America Great Again? Full of dog whistles, full of racism, full of misogyny, full of corruption. They got him out. We voted him out after 4 years. And so now we're somewhat back. And we don't have to have, the second African American president in office, to say that we're back. We control the Oval Office. We control 2/3 of government as Democrats in this country. And so this is, at the end of the day, this is what it's about. Power sharing. Now, as I said, to my Democratic voters, to that 90-something plus percentile, people of color who are voting Democrat, this is a time where, for the first time in American history, we have a chance to truly share power and not have those who would be racist or biased against us to rule over us. So, we owe that to the generations that have come before us and struggled, who marched, bled, died. We owe it to, brothers like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. We owe it to them to take the bull by the horns, to take this opportunity in America to share power. Because this is the elephant in the room right now, if you will. That, we're not being ruled over. We're all ruling together. We can control more of our own destiny. And that's, the purpose of Soluble coming forth with a political podcast, to show you the importance of, being able to control your own destiny as it relates to politics. This cannot be something that we, run away from, shy away from. We have to go head first in with strength and determination and a commitment, and we can't lose. We're sharing power right now. There's power sharing going on. And, you start to see Republicans on the other side of the aisle start to say that America's being run by communists, Marxists. They love the labels. They love the name calling, the woke mob, all to strike up fear. But the bottom line is this, when it all comes out in the wash. They don't want to share power. They don't want to share power. Now, as far as Democratic voters and people of color, if you want to keep power, be able to control your own destiny, you're going to have to get involved. You're going to have to get engaged in this, because it's not going to change on its own. A former president in office, seating 3 Supreme Court justices, creating racial tension in the country. This is what minority rule looks like. What I'm saying is, a president like the former President Trump, we know now, can only come about if we don't show up. If we don't show up. But now we're power sharing. We're power sharing, and that's, the big deal. With racist Caucasian America, they're going to label us. Especially us people of color, our vote is more under attack, is under threat. And they're going to label us as criminals, as communist agitators, as a woke mob. But it's simply because they don't want to share power. And so if they're successful at labeling us as, some demagogue, some group of individuals that's going to bring America down, that's, going to drag America into the mud and make it, not the great country that in their eyes it once was. They're gonna play this, they're gonna do fear mongering. They're gonna try to create this idea, this image, this, they're gonna try to draw this conclusion here in a picturesque mental state, if you will, that this is why this is bad for America, and it will set America back. But we here at Soluble, bringing you the facts, bringing it to you like it is. This is what power sharing looks like. This is what power sharing looks like. And as I said, we have to look now at not just being satisfied with the fact that we got African American female on the Supreme Court. We have to look at these as token gestures now, and compared to what we really and truly need. We need fairness. We need equality. And this is what power sharing can bring. This is what power sharing will bring. And that's where we're at now. We're sharing power. And we'll continue to share it in this country and control our own destiny. I'm talking to people of color in particular now, which is 90% or higher of the Democratic voting bloc. We're power sharing. And this is the day and time that we're in now. And, that's what's creating all the tension in America, all the upheaval, all the extremism, all the noise that's coming from the extreme right, the alt-right, hate groups. And now it's up to us to step up to the plate, get this into the end zone, especially people of color. We'll deal with the criminal label. We'll deal with the label that they'll try to affix to us that we're trying to govern America, and we are totally out of touch people, or people who can't sweep around our own door, clean up our own daily lives. So we have no business shot calling in America. And we have to beg to differ by showing up at the polls, putting sound legislation on the books that is going to prove them wrong. We're gonna take another deep dive into certain entitlement programs that create crime. We're gonna take another deep dive into the LGBTQ community and the issues of cancel culture, culture wars, that's happening in America today that might discourage Negroes in America from coming to the Democratic side of the aisle. And, we'll put our points of view out there, and, we look for something from the right, from their point of view, and then let you decide for yourself. Now, we know the history of the country and the path that Negroes in this country have taken from then to now. We just went through, the short list of it, the things that we experienced to get to where we're at today, the negative things, human servitude. I'll go over it again. Jim Crow, separate but equal, which was anything but. And so we're aware of that. But we're here now. We're here now on the 20-yard line, in the red zone, ready to go in and score. And the only thing that can stop us is us. The only thing that can stop us, I repeat, is us. So that's our solution. Where we're at now today in America, people of color in particular, who saw the brunt of the MAGA movement, who saw an attempt there to take away our power. We're back. And the only way we'll go backwards, which we know we can't do, the only way we'll go backwards if we don't get involved, if we don't vote, if we don't get on the phone, if we don't write letters to our political leaders. This is what power sharing looks like. Are you ready? Are you qualified? Can you seize the moment? Because if you don't, if you refuse to, then you have no one to blame. You have no group of people to blame. The race card now is null and void. That's our position here at Soluble. Any Negro in America who's willing to play the race card but not get fully involved in the numbers game, in the political numbers game, is taking a backwards approach. That argument is akin to the dinosaur now. So there's no finger pointing, across racial lines. We're power sharing. We stopped Make America Great Again, because it was trying to take away our power, versus the change that came before Make America Great Again. We had a change administration, and not change along racial lines, change for the betterment of all America. And then we had to Make America Great Again, which was pushed back because of the first African-American president. So, that's, in summing it up, that's telling it like it is. We're back at a position of power sharing now, where we can more control our own destiny. We have a president in office who will listen, who understands, who feels empathy. And even though we have that now, there's no time for complacency. And so we have to stay aggressive. We have to stay proactive so we never have to react again. And those are the responsibilities when it comes to power sharing, which is definitely where we're at now. We're power sharing. We're calling shots and we're having shots called as people of color in this country. And to move it forward, as I said, to get it across the goal line, because we're not quite there at equality yet. We're not quite there at equality yet. The former president still looms large in Republican circles, in spite of the damage that he's done to the country. Whether it be here at home or abroad, in spite of the damage, in spite of, smearing mud on the American freedom reputation, he still looms large. So we have work to do. No time for complacency. Stay vigilant, stay aggressive, stay focused, and be ready to vote going into the 2024 calendar year. That's going to do it for tonight's broadcast. At Soluble here, we thank you for coming out. We thank you for giving us a listening ear. And as I said, always we come on to solve with intentions of solving. And, that's our reasoning for breaking it down, to give you a full view, a full knowledge and understanding of where we're at right now at this moment in time in American history. We're at a moment in time of power sharing, where Negroes in America in particular are no longer ruled over, but we all rule together. This is what power sharing looks like. But we have to keep pushing and keep pushing. And, going forward, we will get that level of equality. We're almost there, but it's no time to rest. And even when we get there, we have to keep our eyes on the prize. We have to protect it. Once we get that equality, we have to protect it. We have to always nourish it, always take care of it, always pass it on from generation to generation to let them know, what it finally took to get that equality. From going from human servitude to sharing power in America as a race of people. And so, that's definitely where we're at this moment in time in history. And we've tried to break it down to you at one case point, from change we can believe in to make America great again. There was power sharing, there was pushback on that power sharing, and then we're back again, sharing power. And that's where we want to stay. That's where we're required to be. We need to be in order to gain equality in this country. We'd like to thank you for joining us here at Soluble. Our goal and intention going forward is to bring you more weekly casts. As I said, our daily operations have somewhat slowed us down for lack of help. Trying to keep that daily occupation under control, as it is the breadwinner for us to bring you podcasts on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So that's our intention going forward, is to bring you more podcasts. So we're going to close tonight on that note. We thank you for coming out and joining us, giving us a listen. We welcome any feedback. We welcome feedback from, our fellow Democrats, from the other side of the aisle, Republicans, because at the end of the day, the only thing that we care about first and foremost is solving the political climate in order to make America a place where people regardless of race, regardless of status, whether you're born, whether you're immigrants, you can go after, on a level playing field, the American dream, and putting your best foot forward, achieve it with no hindrance, no stumbling blocks whatsoever. That's our goal here at Soluble. So we thank you for joining us. Until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. Thank you and God bless. Good night.